And the last part of the talk, I just will put some thoughts about things that like I'm thinking recently, and also I think that's going to be some of the challenges to do science here or elsewhere. I was in University of São Paulo last week, and they were discussing there. They do something that's very interesting. They just started, I think, this year with they call the USP. That's the name of the university, right? It's USP conferences. In this conference, they invite some people from Brazil, from abroad. In that case, they were discussing stem cells. And at the end, they do a round table, and they ask, what do we have to do to have USP to be like one of the top leaders in this field? And then they start to discuss things. And then I was there. I'm not from USP. I'm from Rio de Janeiro. And then I realized that basically their challenges are always, it's exactly like our challenges. And one of the challenges that they have there, and that we have also, and I believe that some of you also has, is the problem of collaboration, right? We need to collaborate more. And unfortunately, we don't collaborate as much as we need. And that's something that they were trying to be able to organize there in USP, try to improve the collaboration, the internal collaboration. That basically, sometimes you have some of your colleagues in your department or across the street that they don't collaborate with them. So this is something that they try to improve. The other thing is try to create more core facilities. We don't have so many core facilities, at least in Rio. People start to buy several things. And sometimes they have the same equipment, and they have like 3, 4, 7 same equipment in the same university. Why we could have just one, that if it was well managed, would be save money and be more efficient. And then they also asked there, and I also was in another round table discuss this thing. What would be the things that are more difficult to? What are the problems, if any, that are unique to the research that challenge these collaborations? So one of these things is authorship. I mean, not authorship, but the way that we define authorship. So it's very important. Like this, basically, some of the lists that like define an author in a paper, but something that like we should keep in mind is that this you will not have a problem with an author if you discuss in advance with him how will be the division of your paper. If you don't do that, then you may be going to increase some expectations about the authorship. The other guy will do the same, and then you have a problem at the end when the paper is being written. So this is some of the things that like we have to keep in mind to avoid this problem and to improve the collaborations. And the other thing that also is happening a lot, and we start to discussing here in Brazil, is the problem of like misconduction or fraud in science. And that's something that's like increasing a lot, and probably it's because of the pressure that all of us will have in order to publish. Because if you don't publish, you are nobody. Basically, sometimes, and depending on the situation or university, you basically some numbers. You look to someone, oh, how many papers? This guy has 45 papers. Oh, he's nice. The other one has 10. He's not so good. So basically, you define your life based on the number of papers or your H index. So it's something very tricky that we have to at least to think about how we define the quality of the scientist. But that said, there is some studies trying to define it. Some were published in Nature, trying to define how frequently is misconduct in research. So some of the studies, they say that's like 1 in 100,000, but some of them say that's 1 in 100. We would say on every 100 papers, one has some kind of problem. Could be plagiarism, could be fraud, or could be something. And that's something that we really have to think about it. And this is just one chart. I don't know if you can hear here. So does this happen often? So basically, this is some scientists, they are discovering about this fraud when they are reading the newspapers. And it's happening a lot, even in Brazil. Sometimes we just know about these things. And then it's hard for our own community to deal with that, because we are not accustomed to try to discuss that things. But it's very important to deal with the situation. There's another study that was published in PLOS. And that would be how many scientists fabricate or falsify research. So 8.7% of researchers like us, they say that they are, at some point they falsify some of their results. Then they estimate that 1 to 3% of the scientific articles have some kind of plagiarism. Here, we're not talking about fraud in this specific kind. Could be just like you get a piece, a phrase for another paper, put in your paper without citing, without changing, and then you make a paper. And some people say, oh, it's because the problem of English, so there's a debate about this thing. The incidence of plagiarism among students, so that thing is tough. Like sometimes around 60% of the students, they make some kind of plagiarism in the college. Like could be writing things or a work that they have to, the teacher, they ask for a work and then they come with the work that was just copy and paste from the internet. So that's something that's very tough. And what's also interesting is that sometimes over 20% of them, they didn't realize that they were doing plagiarism. Or didn't know that if I cut this piece from the internet and put in my work, it was plagiarism. So that's one thing that's maybe more important than any other thing is the education. Like if you punish it, okay, but you're not going to be punishing, it's going to be like, it's not going to resolve. You have really to educate people. When I was coming here this morning to Búzios, I was in the traffic jam, and there was like 90% of the cars, they were in the waiting line because of the traffic jam. But 10% of them, they were crossing in the right side that was wrong and trying to. And I was thinking about, it's like this thing. So there are people doing bad things. You could put like one guard every corner, but it's not going to work, it's hard. So you have to educate people, because if you don't educate people, every time there will be someone trying to cross in your right side, as it happens in this case. So, and then sometimes we don't know what should we do in the case of plagiarism. And that's something that's, I know that's different, at least in Brazil, when you compare to other countries, at least in the US. When I arrived in the US, first thing that I went to a class, and they were explaining how important it was for me, depending on the situation, they call to blow the whistle, right? To say that if you're saying something wrong. Sometimes in other countries, sometimes in Brazil, people become a little shy to say something that like they see that it's wrong. And this is something that you have to educate people. You're not going to be like betraying anybody if you see something that's wrong, but you have to say, at least to discuss, to educate this other guy. And this is just another example. That's what we call self-plagiarism, that instead of to get something from another people, you get from yourself. And instead of like, and then sometimes you can reuse another work and pass it as a new one. Portions of your presentation showing in a different way. Duplicate, triplicate, quadruplicate publication. Redundant publication, or increase the number of the publications on case studies. Instead of like publishing one paper with 10 patients, you publish with one patient and with another patient and another patient. So there's, but this kind of things is also tricky because maybe it's a consequence of the pressure that we have to publish. So this is a more long-term discussion. And I don't know if you guys know, there are some software available in the internet that you can use to detect plagiarism. And then when you use these softwares, something very bizarre happens. Sometimes, based on the software, 23% of all papers, they have some kind of plagiarism. So that's something that we definitely have to discuss. And the questions here are, who should be in charge of checking for plagiarism? And to be publishers, peer reviewers, scientists, or everybody. So again, that same thing. It's going to be crazy, everybody just checking for plagiarism. We need to educate people. We need to at least change the perspective of what is becoming, what it is to be a good scientist, what it is to do a good science. Instead of having 100 papers, maybe you have 30, but with a much more high quality. So this is one phrase from this researcher from the Federal University of Rio de Janeiro, Sônia Vasconcelos. She worked with plagiarism, so it's a very interesting person. And then she said that the most important thought is to avoid students to become intellectual slaves, incapable of developing your own research and to develop your own ideas. So basically, this is what we need. When you do the plagiarism, you become a slave of someone else that's doing the work for you, and then you can really create new things. My last slide, and it's not related with plagiarism or nothing like that, but this is a very remarkable paper for me. It's from this guy called Michael Kaplan. He was one of the first scientists to describe what we call neurogenesis. That's basically the creation of new neurons in the adult brain. So nowadays, all of us, we are creating new neurons in our hippocampus. And this is why we are able to retain memories, because of this neurogenesis. But when he started to describe it, everybody in the scientific community said that he was crazy, that he was not, that doesn't really exist, that thing is, I know, he was lying, or he was something else. And then basically he gave up science. He went to work, he started to work as an accountant, completely unrelated with science. And then 20 years later, he was invited to write a review about the neurogenesis, about this new field. And then he basically said this about the environmental complexity stimulates visual cortical neurogenesis, death of a dogma and of a research career. That was his own career. So that's something that we have to keep in mind, is that like if you believe in your story, you need to be hard and you need to be strong. Because like every time that you try to change a paradigm, that you try to create a new idea, or try to bring a new idea, people will say that your idea is incorrect. So this, every time that like I'm insecure about something, I remember about this guy, and I remember how it's important for us to keep on track, and if you have solid data, things will happen in a good way sooner than later. That's it. I will just finish with this phrase from this Brazilian writer and poetry, Ferreira Goulart. That's basically, I don't want to be right, just want to be happy. It's basically what I'd like to do with you here, just to share some of my thoughts. I don't know if they're right or not, but I'm very happy to be here with you. Thank you.